Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome all. I hope we are enjoying our off season. It's going by fast, folks. It is going by fast. We are right now in early February. Players are already reporting to Port St. Lucie, so you like to see that. And folks, I am just thinking about our New York Mets. Can't wait to opening day. Pretty sure you feel very similar about that. And at the end of the day, I cannot wait to see Mr. Juan Soto in the batter's box at Citi Field. That is going to be something special. But, that just got me to thinking, seeing the PeCOTA projections come out a couple of days ago, and the PeCOTA projections, they predict how many wins a team will have each respective year. So I went back the last couple of years and, just curious how correct PeCOTA was and some interesting results. This year, 2025 projection, PeCOTA projects the Mets to win 88.7 wins. So not even 89. 89 wins is what the Mets won last year. And obviously last year, they exceeded expectations. So how are we feeling about this current roster? And, honestly, I think you got to realistically, your feelings about this roster really have to be in you have to put it in perspective to last year, because every year what you want when you're team building is you want growth. You want improvement at each position. You want a plan. So what I did is I looked at last year's roster, last year's opening roster. So I compared that to where we currently are right now. Are we better? Are we worse? Is last year's opening starting rotation? How's the starting rotation now compared to last year? How's the bullpen? How's the bullpen now compared to last year? And we all know the way David Stearns and Steve Cohen work is where you start an opening day, you are not a finished product. But if your starting point is at a better place than you were last year, I foresee very good things for this team, especially in the way David Stearns does things. So let's look at PeCOTA and how accurate PeCOTA has been in the past. So PeCOTA predicts the New York Mets to make the playoffs. And so the 2025 PeCOTA standings came to fruition. New York Mets fans should take it to heart. PeCOTA projects the New York Mets to finish with 89 wins. That would be second in the NL East with the 78% chance of making the playoffs. So a pretty good chance of making the playoffs, especially with the expanded playoff situation. The issue is PeCOTA has been all over the place in projecting the Mets win totals in the last couple years. Last season, the algorithm had the Amazons finishing third in the division with 83 wins in the last wild card spot. Obviously, that looked far-fetched for the first half of the year. But outside of the Mets finishing with 5 more wins than PeCOTA projected, PeCOTA hit the nail on the head with the NL East projection and the wild card spot. So the Mets did finish with a couple more wins, but PeCOTA last year predicted that the Mets would get that last wild card spot, and lo and behold, they did. So, I think, truth be told, all the bottom teams, the last wild card spot had a lot higher win total number than what was originally believed. I remember Arizona, we were fighting, and you almost needed 90 wins to make the playoffs. That's actually a rarity, especially with the expanded playoffs. So, PeCOTA in 2023, it was a different story. Everybody, including PeCOTA, thought that it would be a huge season for the New York Mets. After winning 101 games the previous summer, the Mets were projected at 97 wins and to win the NL East title, finishing second in the National League behind the Dodgers. Obviously, we don't really need to go much into detail, but in 2023, it was an absolute dumpster fire with the Mets winning 75 games. And we all remember at the trade deadline trading off many of their top echelon players. Well, not many, but I'll just say the older pitchers, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander specifically. Then there was 2022. Despite how it ended, that was still one of the best regular seasons in franchise history. So, how did PeCOTA see that? So, PeCOTA said that the Mets would finish with 91 wins and they would finish second in the division behind Atlanta. So that year, obviously, the Mets won 101 games, and they actually finished tied with Atlanta. So, I mean, the way they actually end up finishing, as far as the Mets making the playoffs, it seems like PeCOTA has been fairly correct at predicting that. But the win totals have been all over the place. So the 88.9 win total, I take with a grain of salt. I really don't. My win total, I predict when it's all said and done, we're going to get in the mid 90s. We're going to get somewhere in the mid 90s, and I'm basing that off of growth, off of how the Mets build their team. And basically, we won 89 games last year. Didn't have Juan Soto. Juan Soto is going to be close to a 10 WAR player. That means he's going to be good for about 10 wins. Last year was his WAR total was 8. And you know what? Juan Soto's 20, he's 25, going to be 26 years old. The kid, I don't think you've seen the best of Mr. Juan Soto. I think we're going to see an even better, greater year than Juan Soto's ever put up. Ever put up. So how does this team stack up now? Right now, currently constituted, and I firmly believe we 100% will be making addition. David Stearns, a very analytical guy, very analytical mind. The front office is extremely busy. They're going to see how the team plays, and remember, how the players play is, and let's say somebody's failing, it's not going to be guys with a long leash. You saw last year, David Stearns, especially with bullpen guys had a very quick hook, and David Stearns was very quick to change course. And that's what I liked about him. And that's what I really like about this front office. When something is not working out, they're not going to say, all right, you know what? Here's a whole season. Here's 4 months. No, next man up. And that type of pressure tells the guys that they have to perform, or that's it. That is it. So last year, let's look at how we started the season and really what was the opening day roster and how's it changed from now. And I think it's quite interesting. Uh, all right, so let's look at the opening day roster. Last year, you had Francisco Alvarez, Omar Narvaez behind the plate. All right, so you know what? I'll compare position to position. So last year you had Omar Narvaez as a backup to Francisco Alvarez. Nothing really much has changed. You have Francisco Alvarez going into his third season, and I think that this is going to be the breakout season for this kid. And I'm going to also say, after I analyze it, I think we have a better situation this year because Francisco Alvarez was dealing with injury. Whether you think the kid should have played differently, if you analyze that kid all year long, you could see that it was blatantly obvious that the kid was dealing with some type of injury. I mean, the only pitch that Francisco Alvarez could really handle was the high fastball out over the plate. That was the only pitch, and he did hit a lot of fly balls deep to center field, but that was really the only pitch that he didn't really have trouble with. If pitchers inside, especially high and tight, up until September, he had a lot of trouble pulling his hands in. It wasn't a normal swing, but I like that the kid, he didn't go on the injured list. He said that the team, I mean, obviously he knew that the team really needed him, and the win-loss record with Alvarez in the lineup was extremely greater than having Alvarez outside the lineup. I do like Luis Torrens as a backup. You don't lose a lot defensively at all. You don't lose anything defensively, in my opinion. And Torrens, although he doesn't provide that dynamic pop, he actually surprised me last year with the bat coming through in some very good RBI positions, and I actually like what he provided. So Luis Torrens as a backup, I think that's an upgrade over Novares, and I think Alvarez is going to have his breakout year. Therefore, I think the catching situation is better than last year. Okay, so last year you had Pete Alonso. He was your starting first baseman. And yeah, you had Pete Alonso. There was really, I mean, Pete Alonso plays 162 games. You got to give him credit. This year, it's a little different. This year, as of right now, you have Mr. Mark Vientos, and backup, you have Brett Beatty. So Mark Vientos, I think he's got a chance to be an all-star. So you have Francisco Alvarez has a chance to be an all-star. Mark Vientos has a chance to be an all-star. It's really tough to really grade this one because I think that Pete Alonso is going to be back into the fold. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, folks. I think Pete Alonso is going to be back into the fold, but Mark Vientos, I think, is going to continue to grow. I really think he's going to continue to grow. So I'm going to say right now that first base is basically a wash from last year. It's a wash from last year. So we'll go to second base. The second base situation, last year you have Jeff McNeil. This year, if you go to the depth chart, it's still Jeff McNeil. But right after Jeff McNeil, you have a whole slew of young options. You have Ronnie Mauricio, you have Luis Angel Acuna, you have Jared Young, and you have the newly acquired Nick Madrigal. So you have a lot of options back there. You really do. I think the days of Jeff McNeil starting more often than not are over. I really do. I think you got a bunch of young kids knocking at the door. Whether you have confidence in them or not, that's really not this, but that's really not the point. The point is developing these guys, right? If you have 2, 3, 4 middle infielders, you want to build their value as well. So whether you want to develop them for your team or develop them to trade them to build their value, I think that it is better to have those guys starting at a middle infield position than Mr. Jeff McNeil. Plus, they add an extra dynamic element. Those last 2 weeks of the year, having Luis Angel Acuna in there, that was phenomenal. That was amazing. And if we all remember, Lindor was hurt. Lindor got hurt. It was almost a catastrophe. He missed a couple games. Luckily, he came back before we got to the playoffs, but we didn't miss a beat. We really didn't miss a beat, and we needed to win those games. And why did we not miss a beat? That was because of the production, the dynamic production of a Luis Angel Acuna. And that's why some are saying right now there's a viewpoint in terms of trading for Dylan Cease. People are saying, hey, trade Luis Angel Acuna. I mean, he had a phenomenal last couple weeks. Right now, people around the league view him in a very good light. Take advantage of that. Honestly, I do not think that we even clipped the potential this kid has, because a lot of baseball, and I'll say it, Greg Maddux, he said it perfectly. Baseball is 60% mental. And the reason why he said that is because he wanted to stress how mental this game is. So he wanted to make sure he put a number over 50%. That's why he went to 60%. But folks, how many of these players have gone by, have all the tools, all the talents, all the top prospects, but they weren't able to cut it in the big leagues? Problem is, they could not cut the mental aspect. This kid is oozing confidence, and the mental game he has in spades. This is the kid this is the type of kid I think is going to continue to grow. He's got an excellent pedigree with his brother in the league, obviously Ronald Acuna. But I have so much confidence, and I love to see him penciled in at second base. And this is why I'm going to say, hands down, we're better at catcher. Back up with Terrens, and we are better at second base right now, having Ronnie Mauricio, having Luis Angel Acuna, having those dynamic options. Okay, moving over to shortstop, and I'm going to say this too. I think we have a better position at shortstop. You're probably saying it's Francisco Lindor. It's the same exact situation as last year. Well, it's not the same exact situation. It's really not. So Lindor is going to be the shortstop. He'll have backups, Acuna. He'll have a couple guys backing him up. Nick Madrigal. That's not really how I'm evaluating. I'm evaluating because the first 2 months, Lindor was trying to find himself. June comes along, Lindor moves to the leadoff position, and it just clicks. It really just clicked. And sometimes it takes time. It takes putting the guy in the right position. Putting him in a leadoff position really transformed this guy. And, you had 2 months of having Lindor get going. If Lindor takes off in the beginning of the season like he ended the last 4 months, we are going to have a full 6 months. And that's what everybody said when Lindor was second place for the Lindor was second place for the MVP voting. Everybody said, "Hey, imagine he had those first 2 months of MVP performance." Well, folks, that's what I envision this year to be. 6 months in a lineup with Juan Soto, having that fierce competitiveness, and I see that as a good thing. With Vientos, another year. I really love it. I think I think we're gonna have an even better performance from Lindor this year. And the Gold Glove caliber shortstop, I love that. The guy's a multiple time Silver Slugger. 3 out of his first 4 years here with the New York Mets, he's finished in the top 10 in MVP voting. Last year, obviously, he was number 2, right behind Shohei Ohtani. Would have won if Shohei stayed in the American League. But Lindor, great two-way player. Very great two-way player. All right. So far, the catching situation, I see an upgrade. And look at this, folks. You have potential. Catcher to be an all-star. First base, if Pete comes back, all-star. Second base, you're not so sure yet. Shortstop, all-star. So, the infield's looking pretty nice. Mark Vientos, all-star. So if we go to the third base situation right now, as it stands, without having signed Pete, the situation's going to look a little shaky. Last year's situation, you had Brett Beatty starting and Joey Wendell as the backup. So that was the situation last year. Right now, the situation at third base is you have a bunch of guys behind Mark Vientos. I fully expect Mark to be at third base. I can't see Pete Alonso not signing, but obviously it's a crazy situation. I want to stay away from in this video. So at third base options, you could have Ronnie Mauricio. You have Luis De Los Santos, Jared Young, and obviously Nick Madrigal. I think it's going to be a situation where it's probably going to be a Brett Beatty. It's probably going to be a Brett Beatty if Mark Vientos has to play first base. So that would be the same exact situation that we had last year. You would hope Brett Beatty, another year in the minor leagues, he would have discovered something, but he's been disappointing. So I'm just going to have to say that third base situation is pretty much the same. So the outfield last year, the outfield situation was Brandon Nimmo, Starling Marte, Harrison Bader, and Tyrone Taylor. So that, I got to say that was, the outfield last year was very underwhelming, to say the least. Starling Marte, obviously, he was all this year, all last year. He was very often injured. Harrison Bader, good defensive guy, but not much else. Tyrone Taylor, a good fourth outfielder. But the outfield situation wasn't great last year. It wasn't great. Outfield situation this year, obviously major upgrade. You add one of the best bats in all of baseball. You put Juan Soto in right field, and there's just so many options in the outfield. There really are. There really are. I'll say center field is still not solved yet. It's really not solved. Left field, you have Brandon Nimmo. Hopefully he stays healthy. But you have a situation where Brandon Nimmo, he could have made the All-Star team last year. Brandon Nimmo having a very solid season. I would say his first half of the season was a lot better than the second half. He had to deal with that plantar fasciitis, but he's shown a propensity to hit more home runs in the last couple of years. Last year, he had 23 home runs, 90 RBIs. They batted him a little further down in the lineup. His on base did go down. He had a very less than expected Brandon Nimmo on base. But I think he was dealing with things. I think he was dealing with things. But if he continues with the pop on an upward trajectory with Juan Soto in the lineup, Mark Vientos continuing to grow, I think he could be one of the best left fielders in the game. Certainly a top 5 left fielder. And that's really good. If you have a top 5 left fielder, you have obviously a top 2 right fielder in the game in Juan Soto. The center field is a little tough. The center field, I'll admit right now, we don't have any guy that is an obvious starting. You're probably going to go by matchups. You have Tyrone Taylor, Jose Siri, and Brandon Nimmo as a backup as well. I think Taylor and Siri are going to get, based on the matchups, we're going to see who starts there. Jose Siri, I do think it was a really good move. The guy, when you watch him, you're going to see how dynamic of an outfielder he is. This guy, I'm not sure if he's won a Gold Glove, but he's definitely a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. He certainly is, and he's shown good pop in limited at bats. For example, in 100 games in 2023, the guy popped 25 home runs. In 2024, in 130 games, 400 at bats. So if you want to say 600 at bats is playing full time, guy had 400 at bats, 18 home runs. So there is something there. If they can tweak the guy's swing to make him more of a contact hitter, that would be optimal, because his lifetime average is 210, and that's been the problem with Jose Siri. His contact situation, he really doesn't make contact as much as you would like, and he strikes out way too much. Last year, he struck out 170 times. So if the Mets can find a way, maybe he's swinging too much for power, swinging too much for the fences. If the defensive side is great with Jose Siri, if they could somehow minimize his swing path, and get this guy to focus a little more on contact, I think we might have something there. Regardless, you have Tyrone Taylor, Brandon Nimmo. Maybe late in the year, Drew Gilbert comes up. There are options. Maybe a Jet Williams comes up, plays the outfield. I've heard some people suggest that as well. So there are options. But nonetheless, the situation in the outfield, in my opinion, is much improved. You have 2 potential all-stars in Nimmo and obviously Juan Soto. So, I'm looking, people are saying, oh, you want to get all-stars. And, that's not really the deal where you want to get all-stars in every position, but it is nice to fill the diamond with potential all-stars. Francisco Alvarez, Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto. These are all guys that have the potential to have all-star-like years. Okay, so what's going on with the DH situation? Last year, the DH situation was quite simple. We started off the year with DJ Stewart, and we were waiting for JD Martinez to get his legs underneath him, because he just signed at the end of spring training. So watching last year kind of tells you David Stearns will work all the way up until the season and beyond. So there still might be guys to come into the fold. But right now, I would say our DH, is going to be a situational thing right now. You have, Winker, we just signed him recently. Winker could play first base. But right now, I would have to say that would be your number one option at DH. Some of the kids could play rotate at DH, but I would have to say Winker is an upgrade over DJ Stewart. So our opening day lineup compared to last year is a clear upgrade, really a clear upgrade, right at the very least. Juan Soto is better than Pete Alonso, right? So it's easier to figure out right there. And then I think Mark Vientos, he wasn't on the opening day roster last year, so that is a huge boost, a huge boost. So you have Vientos and you have Soto added to this roster, and potentially you have Pete Alonso being lost. And I'm going to say this: I hear a lot of outside fan bases saying, "Oh, what's wrong with the Mets? Pay the All-Star, pay Pete Alonso, give him the money. What's wrong with you guys?" I mean, I know. A lot of outside fan bases would love us to give Pete Alonso a long-term contract, lock the guy up until he's 36 years old, pay him $200 million. You'd love it, because it's not a smart move. It's not a smart move, and you see why all of baseball is not doing it. The Mets are trying to be smart, folks. They are trying to get Pete Alonso for, the years he'll be productive. And I know it sounds shrewd. I know it sounds mean if you look at it from Pete Alonso's standpoint, like, oh, you only want to get, I guess you only want him for when he's productive. And honestly, that's what the Mets are trying to do. They're trying to capitalize the most productive years and pay the guys for what they're worth. If they have a worldwide appeal, if they, like a Juan Soto, they'll be paid a lot more because they bring in that revenue and they have that on the field and off the field production. So they'll be paid in kind. Plus, a guy like Juan Soto being the first, well, I'll say Lindor was the first superstar-like player to join the team. Now you're building Juan Soto. And that's team building is over the course of time. Like the Dodgers. Mookie Betts was a couple years ago, and Freddie Freeman. So it took the Dodgers a significant time period to get where they are right now. The Mets are in doing that. You're going to see over the course of time, the Mets will get to where you want them to go, where I want them to go. They're not going to get anywhere going like that. If you build it like that, we're going to have another 2023 disaster. All right. So, despite not signing Alonso, I still think the Mets have a better lineup. Okay, now the starting rotation going into last April, you had Quintana, Severino, Manaya, Adrian Hauser, and Tyler McGill. So you had Quintana, Severino, Manaya, Adrian Hauser, and Tyler McGill. That was your starting five. And that was when Manaya, you didn't know if he was going to be like a top end pitcher. If he was a 3, you're like, okay, great. He's a 3, we're paying him $14 million. Quintana, 34, 35-year-old soft-throwing lefty, not expecting much from him. I mean, our lineup, our rotation really took a blow after losing Senga. So this year, going into April, our rotation, just by virtue of adding Senga, is much improved. So you add Senga, Manaya, you have him a year developed. You have him going into a top echelon pitcher. Then you have Holmes, Peterson. Peterson was injured in the beginning of last year. That's why he wasn't in the rotation. So you can either slot Holmes at number 3, Clay Holmes, or you can put Peterson there. So let's just say, make a decision. So Clay Holmes, number 3 spot. Peterson, he'll be in the number 4 spot. And you have Frankie Montas in the 5th spot. I still think, if we want to get to where we want to go, you certainly need another front end piece. But that's not to say a guy like Brandon Sproat, you bring him up early in the season, the guy lights it up in April and May, you bring him up by June, and this guy, he might be that other front end option. So that's why I would not want to include him in any of these trades for Dylan Cease, Michael King. And, and I've heard all the feedback, and we have this is a very intelligent community. I know the thing about Dylan Cease and having that Scott Boras agent really kind of affects the package. It really does. It affects what you would give up, because if you trade for one of these players, like what the Dodgers did last year, trading for Tyler Glass now, the idea is to secure that player for the next 4 or 5 years, give him extended contract. Doing that with a Dylan Cease, unless you want to pay the guy $250 million right now, is not a viable option. It's not a viable option. Now, it's so funny. It's really funny that you hear everybody trying to alter a Dylan Cease package. Like, you're like, oh, what would be the Dylan Cease package? First I hear, well, you see the Juan Soto trade, and with the Padres had to give up for Juan Soto, it would be around that. And then you hear, oh, well, the Orioles gave this for Corbin Burns, it would have to be around that. Well, the Padres just traded for Dylan Cease last year for the exact player. So you don't have to imagine. And the Padres obviously put it out. They're looking for 3 top 25 players. So that's what the package is. Would you do it? Would you not do it? I think it's something you could work out. But I'd rather, I'm more of a Michael King fan. But I'd want to trade for Michael King, extend him right away. I think that's more of a viable option with a Michael King. So that's who I would go with. But, I just want to run a couple of things by you. And if you haven't got a chance, I know I haven't mentioned it. I always do this early in the morning. Please like. It helps out the video grow, or, helps the channel grow. If you're a new subscriber and you like listening to this type of content, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to keep you here. So let's get to some stuff, because if you look at the news right now, especially news about the Mets, a week or two before spring training, it is dead. It is dead right now, especially if, nothing's really happening. The Mets aren't acquiring players. Obviously you'll hear all these trade rumors. And I gotta love the trade rumors. But 99.99% of those rumors are BS, 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 BS. Right? So I want to have like a segment, a BS, probably like segment. And the latest, I would say, BS trade that I saw, and I saw this. I saw a couple articles about this trade, and it was geared toward elevating the Mets because Juan Soto doesn't have protection. So the Mets, I guess, a package was put together to help the Mets get protection for Mr. Juan Soto. And when they saw this package, it was laughable. It was laughable. And, when you read these articles, you kind of see where they're geared. Are they geared toward a New York Mets bias or another team's bias? And this was clearly a bias from another team. So the thought process was to trade for a Luis Robert Jr. He would provide some protection in the lineup for Juan Soto. Luis Robert Jr., he's a center fielder. He provides a gold glove center fielder. And I just said center field is a spot that, is really kind of shaky. You'd really have to rotate Tyrone Taylor, Jose Siri, and Jose Siri has to work on making contact. But the thing with Robert is he's coming off a very underwhelming season. He's had injuries. Last year, he played only 100 games, a 1.4 wins above replacement, 14 home runs, 35 RBIs, still decent number of steals, 23, 224 batting average. It was underwhelming. The year before that, great. 5 WAR, 38 home runs, 80 RBIs, 264 batting average, 542 slug, 857 OPS. His contract situation is he's going into his last guaranteed year, making $15 million. But then the team has an option for the next 2 years. So technically, it's a 3-year contract. The option that he has for 2026 and 2027 is for the team to pay him $20 million. That's about a Brandon Nimmo number. So it's not unreasonable at all, especially for a top outfielder. So, but here's the thing. The idea to make this trade is, would he be that protection? He'd be obviously a good defensive guy. Is he better than Jose Siri? I'm not sure. It would be kind of close. They're both top echelon They're both top echelon guys. He is a Gold Glove Award winner, but the theory about trading him is to upgrade the bat. He's only had 1 year in his entire career where he's hit above 14 home runs, and that was 2023. So I mean, if you're going to give up a package like I'm about to read you, I would like a little more consistency. So the package that has been kind of going around, and that kind of like really had me like move around in my chair. Like I had to like check it twice. And then I also checked it on baseball trade values to see how fair this was. But here's what was proposed, and this was proposed by fan cited Jacob Mounts. I don't know however you pronounce this guy's name, but this is what this genius proposed. The Mets would receive Luis Robert Jr. On baseball trade values. I think they give him a value of 12. 12, that's how baseball trade values him. And the package going back would be the White Sox receiving Jeff McNeil, shortstop Jet Williams, outfielder Drew Gilbert, and right-handed pitcher Nolan McLean. So depending on which baseball or which farm system rankings you look at, those are three top 10 prospects that the Mets would be giving up, plus the services of Jeff McNeil. So those three prospects, Jet Williams, Drew Gilbert, and right-handed pitcher Nolan McLean, that totals up to a value of close to 50 on baseball trade values. And like I said, Luis Robert is valued at 11 or 12. So you would be giving up almost 4 times the value according to baseball trade values. I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but what I am saying is you are giving a hell of a lot of talent away for Luis Robert Jr. What you are getting back is a guy who hit over 14 home runs once. And I would say, oh, you're getting improved defense in center field, but you have Jose Siri, and he's a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. So you're not improving your center field defense at all. So, and then if the guy hits close to his average, which is 20 home runs, Jose Siri can hit 20 home runs. I mean, I'm just, look at this. I really like Jose Siri really has similar numbers. Look at it's eerily similar, really eerily similar. The batting average, and this is what I think the Mets kind of looked at. Jose Siri, Gold Glove center fielder, caliber center fielder. But if you look at his stats compared to Luis Robert last year, Jose Siri had a 1.8 wins above replacement. Luis Robert, 1.4. Jose Siri hit 18 home runs. Luis Robert, 14 home runs. Luis Robert hit 224 with the batting average. Jose Siri, 187. So, quite lower. But he's a very poor man. I mean, like, obviously, I don't want to compare it to Luis Robert because he's not on that level. But you have a very poor man's Luis Robert right now. I just don't think if you want to upgrade a Jose Siri to Luis Robert, it's not worth giving up Jet Williams, Drew Gilbert, Jeff McNeil. I mean, not really care about Nolan McLean, who's really got good potential. The guy's like the spin master. So it's just tough. It's kind of tough. I saw that and I'm like, oh, are we getting back a pitcher? Are we trading that for? I mean, the amount of upgrade that I'm seeing and the amount of inconsistency Luis Robert is going to bring back is just not nearly enough to give up 3 top 10 prospects. Come on now. Fan cited Jacob Mutz. I don't know if you work for the Chicago Tribune, but or where the hell you're coming from. But I guess you want to incite fans. I guess you want to, especially you Mets fans, tweaking them. Like you hear Mets fans who don't want to give up Jet Williams for Dylan Cease. So I don't know. I found that a bit funny. 5:00 in the morning. Let me know what your opinion is. Would you do the trade? I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't consider trading for Luis Robert, but certainly not for that package. So, all right. Let me know what you think. we're gonna probably end it here. I think I got work in an hour and a half. So thank you all. I will speak to you very soon. Have a great day. Enjoy your day, folks.